The city of Chicago has the third largest school system in the United States, with an annual budget of nearly $10 billion. In November of 2024, the citizens of Chicago will once again have the opportunity to elect board members to the Chicago public school system. Public schools are one of the major pillars of a healthy community. Local school leadership is the key to a strong working relationship among community stakeholders, school administration, frontline educators, public officials, and private interests. The Bronzeville Alliance highlights one of the candidates running for the District 6 seat on the CPS School Board, Jessica Biggs.
My mother and father were career elementary school teachers. I spent much of my childhood in and around schools, not only my own, but theirs, and school politics.
She is clearly well qualified for the task.
So I spent a year out on the East Coast, earning a master's in school leadership at Harvard and interning in Boston Public Schools, and then came back here, where I started work as a resident principal in Hyde Park at Cantor Middle School. I worked with John Price, who was our chief of schools at that point, and there was to be a vacancy here at Burke.
Biggs is well known in the Bronzeville educational community, having served as principal at Burke Elementary School for several years.
When I met my chief at the office to learn what school I would be taking on, because I didn't know until that day, he said to me, "This is one of the most challenging culture and climates I've ever seen in a school."
During her tenure from 2012 to 2018, Principal Biggs brought a renewed sense of academic excellence and community engagement to the school.
And I knew right from that moment that if we were going to have any shot in terms of building this into a space where young people felt embraced and accepted and teachers felt safe to experiment and engage in their practice in a meaningful way, that everyone who walked into the building was really going to need to experience the space differently on the first day, and that I certainly could not do that alone.
She more than doubled the size of the student body, incorporated a child parent center to support Burke's youngest learners, tripled the size of the school staff, intentionally engaged parents and community in the life of the school, and ultimately moved the school off of probation in 2018.
The work very much needed to happen in partnership with community. Much of the community at that point had really been excluded from the school, had been disenfranchised. And so I had a lot of work to do in terms of showing up both inside and outside of the school to say to folks, we need you, we want you, this is something different.
For this work, Jessica was recognized by the Bronzeville Community Action Council, the Bronzeville Alliance, the Southeast Chicago Commission, and the Mayor of Chicago. One major factor that helped build a strong community engagement model at Burke was the relationship of Principal Biggs with master storyteller Lorenzo Young.
For you are the future leaders, and all the misgivings of my generation will end with your leadership. And we all say, Ashe. Thank you.
I actually first met Lorenzo when I was interviewing in the neighborhood for principalships. And he thought that I had something interesting and different to say.
Principal Biggs and Lorenzo Young partnered on several trolley tours for staff and students.
Lorenzo taught me a lot about the history of the school and the neighborhood. I felt like it was really important for my staff to make sense of that and to be anchored in the history of the neighborhood. But that was really the way our relationship started. It was around the teaching of the history, the important history of this place.
And lo and behold, it was discovered that Professor Timeo Black was actually an alumnus of Burke Elementary. What was that like when you got a hold of that nugget of knowledge?
It was so exciting, and that's something Lorenzo taught me. So Professor Black was Lorenzo's teacher over at DuSable High School. And we applied for and earned a large school improvement grant from the state back in 2014. And part of the thought of that grant was how to make what was the library a more modern and integrated space that was a space for use of technology and learning of technology. And so it was through conversation with Lorenzo that we thought it was important to commemorate and name that space after Professor Timnall Black.
Principal Jessica Biggs got right on aboard, and so did the Bronzeville Alliance and the Bronzeville Community Action Council.
So we did that in June of 2015.
Yeah, that was quite a celebration to dedicate that space. What was that day like?
I was so proud that day. I don't think I had ever seen so many community members present in our school with a huge level of support for our students and our families. They were deeply invested in what we were thinking about doing.
Voice and sing till heaven ring.
Now, another major space that impacted the school-community relationship is this garden that we're standing in right now.
I always thought that an outdoor space, an outdoor garden, was an important part of what I wanted to see happening around the school. And so I started a conversation with John Worthy, another community member who was really interested in supporting the school in however I could imagine, and had a huge cadre of veterans who were volunteers, who were willing to come and turn over this space so that it could be turned into a community garden where every classroom in the school could have a bed that they could plant and be responsible for, that it would be a space where community-based organizations like the Bronzeville Alliance could come in and work with young people and teach about what we were growing in the beds and think about the environment and the world around them. So from the very beginning, it was just a beautiful community effort to turn this vacant lot into a space that was both for the students and for the community to come together.
It was pretty amazing, I must say.
Yeah.
And we accomplished quite a bit.
The mission continues!
We spent a lot of time in the classroom working with the students.
What was that experience like for you? I'm going to turn it back to you.
It really has encouraged me to challenge the community to become more involved in the classroom, because we often complain from a distance, but a lot of times we don't understand the real day-to-day challenge of working with our students. I think, again, it goes back to school leadership and how open you were to allowing us to come in and really giving us a broad mandate to engage students in the garden and in the broader environmental justice issues. Being a strong school leader with a robust community engagement model is not without its challenges. Principal Biggs began to raise concerns about certain school policies and budget issues.
So that was in 2018. We were very much in Rahm Emanuel's CPS at that moment. We had spent 2 years without a budget from the state. CPS was really having to figure out how they balanced the budget, and in my view, took some really draconian and harmful measures that really impacted some of our most vulnerable students.
Closing of 50 schools and
Closing of 50 schools back in 2013.
Bloody moment.
Yeah, which deeply impacted Burke. There were 6 other schools within a mile of here that were closed in 2013.
As the city came to realize, when a $10 billion school system is under the command of one autocratic ruler, the needs of students often get lost in the shuffle for power and control. In 2018, Principal Biggs was abruptly removed from the leadership of Burke, which greatly disrupted the amazing progress Jessica had brought to the school and the community. Fortunately, Principal Norwood, who stepped into the leadership role at Burke, continued to build on the foundation laid by Principal Biggs. And despite COVID and many other issues, the school is doing its best to serve our students well. Following her dismissal, Jessica took careful note of how petty political power plays can disrupt community development, and was determined to find new ways to serve the educational and social-emotional needs of Chicago students.
In large part, given my experience here at Burke and also my termination, I became very interested in community organizing and organizing as a means of building power. And I've spent the last 6 years almost working with the Southwest Organizing Project, or SWAP, as an organizer.
You're putting families on the Southwest side at risk when you choose to go outside and not wear a mask?
I went in to take on a role to imagine building out a system of care, which is a collaborative or a network of youth-serving organizations, healthcare, behavioral health, and social service organizations, and worked with those institutions and 6 neighborhood schools to imagine how they might systematically partner to connect families to resources in those institutions.
And now, with an opportunity to run for election to serve an initial 2-year term as a CPS board member, Jessica begins a new chapter in her life. What inspired you to take all that on and run for a public office like that?
Yeah, to your point, this is an incredibly exciting opportunity that community members have an opportunity to elect decision makers about our schools. I wanted to make sure that there was someone strong that had kids and families' best interests, including my own daughter's interests, at heart, that had experience on the ground in our schools, and that there was someone who brought that lens and that grounding to our new Board of Education. And so here I am.
What's it like being a CPS parent?
I have learned so much being a CPS parent. I think it certainly shapes it would have shaped my leadership as a principal. I think it just would have made it more full and helped me have a deeper understanding of the sorts of communication and relationships that parents want to have with their schools and their school leaders. It's given me a very different perspective on the system, and so one I'm very thankful to have. It certainly, I think, makes my perspective on the role of our schools much more well-rounded. And of course, I'm deeply invested in one little 5th grader who is full of life and curiosity, and I want to make sure she gets everything she can from her school experience.
It's like the old saying, the whole ocean in a drop. You know,
Absolutely.
So, all right. Well, what would you like to see happen if you do, in fact, get elected to the board? What are some of your goals and objectives?
Yeah. Like I've talked about, I am incredibly eager to be in community and convening community to understand the experience of parents across District 6, to make sure that the decisions that we're making as a board reflect those desires and experiences, that we're making the best decisions as a district to support strong academic outcomes for our students. I'm certainly thinking a lot about funding and budget again in this moment, and how we work with our legislators in Springfield to make sure that our schools are actually adequately funded. So those are all things that I'm thinking about, but ultimately I think it will be really important for this new 21-member board to figure out how to work together and in a coherent way. And so I'm thinking already a lot about how to build relationships with other board members, how to understand other folks' interests, so that as a board we can be a functional decision-making body and acting on the best interests of our students and their families.
The election will be held Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. One candidate will be elected from each of 10 newly drawn districts and serve a 2-year term beginning January 15th, 2025. The mayor will also appoint a board member from each district, bringing the total number of seats to 20. The mayor will also appoint the president of the board. Board members serve without compensation, but may be reimbursed for expenses. In subsequent elections, the entire board will be elected by the citizens of Chicago. You can find out more information and study district maps at chicagoelections.gov. Be sure to check your district location and verify your registration status. Let's provide our students with the tools they need to succeed.